Welcome back to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, events, and issues surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. I am Stephen Conway. With me, as always, Jeremy Finestone. We are contributors to the Fight Game Media Network, and we're here to talk all things New Japan today. And we have a special guest coming up a little bit later in the program to help us talk about Forbidden Door. It's going to be Kevin Ely from the Boom, a show that covers AEW wrestling. So we'll have an AEW expert here on the show. I did the show last week. You did their show last night. I'm loving all this cooperation among not only the Fight Game Media Network, but all the wrestling promotions. It's a good time.
I can't tell you how much fun I had doing that show, man.
Those
two are a blast. And it's funny. They have their way of doing the show and we have ours. And it's like two completely different ways, but it totally works for them. And they have their groove. And it was just a blast. I don't know. Like we went long and it didn't feel like we went long at all. It was great.
And we want to say hello to everybody watching live, including Colin and Brad, as always, right here with us. Glad to see you guys here. And so much to talk about. We're going to be going over the Road to Strong shows first. Kevin's going to join us to talk about Forbidden Door. And then we will discuss, is New Japan Pro Wrestling losing its English voice coming up soon? So we've got a lot of things we need to discuss. I know, painful to think about, but yeah. So if you are listening on a podcast, we do go live on YouTube at 5:15 Eastern Time in the United States. Make sure you like and subscribe. FGM Fight Game Media on the podcast and the YouTube feeds. And make sure to check out all the great shows there. And, of course, if you are listening on a podcast, please give us a rating, 5-star review, and a little feedback out there. We like it. It helps people find the shows, and it is greatly appreciated. But, again, live on YouTube, 5:15 Eastern Time, United States. So let's look at these road shows, and we'll get into Forbidden Door. There has been an interesting run of house shows, basically. Only two of them were broadcast on NJPW World. There was one in Hachioji and one in Chiba. And I did practice saying the word Hachioji before coming on the air. And we have... Not bad, huh? So Road to Strong, but there were others that weren't on that. They follow the very same formula, though. So if you did see the weekend shows on NJPW World, you got the idea. Starting with the Young Lions, Jeremy, most of them open the show and have begun working 10-minute draws against one another, which is kind of another step in the progression, isn't it? Mm-hmm. They keep them in these 6-man tags and these tags, and they learn doing little spots here and there, and then they start getting more and more of those matches, and now they're starting to do those 10-minute draws in the openers, including one, Kosei Fujita, drawing with Ryusuke Taguchi, a main roster guy. It went to 10 minutes with him. But it's been various combinations of guys doing these 10-minute draws. So Fujita, who we mentioned last week, says he's no longer a Young Lion, is still being booked that way, though. He is coming out to the TMDK music instead of the Young Lion music. He's still in all black, and he's still working these early card matches. And he did take a loss to Master Wato. But other than that, he has been doing mostly draws there. So a little gray area with Fujita at the moment, although talent-wise, this is a future star.
I kind of look at it in okay, this guy has told you he's no longer a Young Lion, but now he's got to prove it. It's not just to say that you are, show that you are kind of thing. And so he's got to show his fighting spirit kind of thing. And I think that's the story that they're going, is that he's got to fight for that delineation from what he says he's no longer.
Bolton Oleg, or Oleg Bolton. Again, it depends. He's kind of taken on the Japanese system of his name. His first name is Oleg. His family name is Bolton. But just like in Japan, he's Okada Kazuchika when introduced by the ring announcer. He's been going by Bolton Oleg. He also speaks Japanese fluently, so he's kind of going with that as a name system there. So, but his name is Oleg Bolton if you're in the West. So basically, either way is correct. We'll just go either way. He has been showing a lot of improvement. He is starting to get a little bit of momentum right there. And it's been fun to watch that. He's, again, greener than most Young Lions because he's fast-tracked. So most of the time when you start to see Young Lions on cards, they're a little more polished than Bolton Oleg is. But he's learning quickly. There's little doubt in my mind that if he sticks with pro wrestling, he'll be a star in it because, who looks like that? and just who is. And so it is going to be interesting to see how he goes. The other thing, trend here, Jeremy, is involves the new people in Bullet Club. Those guys are really getting a hard push, almost a shove, in fact. Maloney and Connors, they're attacking Catch 2-2 every night. They're mostly doing 6-man tags where they team with Geto. So they're losing the match because Geto takes the fall. But then afterwards, it's usually to Okan or Hanare or something like that. Afterwards, there's an attack on Catch 2-2. Now, on the New Japan World shows, they've done a little bit extra sometimes where babyface team gets back at them and ends up winning the exchange just so they don't see him getting beaten down every single night. But most of the time on these cards, it's Catch 2-2 being left laying to get Maloney and Connors over as assholes, for one thing, mostly. And then because they're taking the loss and then attacking, and also just over in general because it's a new team. Seeing something very similar with Alex Coughlin and Gabriel Kidd in the heavyweight division. They've done this thing where Goto and Yoshihashi aren't wrestling together, but Goto...
Yeah, they split them up between the two to keep them divided.
So that the War Dogs can beat someone and not have them beat the champions. And then they attack Goto afterwards. Yoshihashi is often at the announcer's desk and has to rush in to try to help Goto, and either takes an ass whooping or ends up getting the comeback, that type of thing. Some sort of post-match clash. Again, getting Alex Coughlin and Gabriel Kidd fired up and in the minds of fans as a dangerous team and a threat. The other thing they did was officially get on the microphone over the course of these shows and accept the challenge for 2 matches between Bishamon and War Dogs, Coughlin and Kidd. On the road, or the strong shows there, the Independence Day shows on July 4th and July 5th, the 2 sets of titles, the strong tag team titles, the IWGP heavyweight tag team titles, will each be on the line in separate matches. On July 4th, it'll be for the strong title. Those same 2 teams will meet the second night for the IWGP title. So that has that's the one little angle that we were suspecting was coming and we saw officially.
I have a question for you that I have come across in the corners of the internet, and I need a strong style judgment on this.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Sure.
The War Dogs. Are all of David Finley's recruits the War Dogs, or are the War Dogs just Gabriel Kidd and Alex Coughlin? Because in the backstage comments, there is a lot of "that's my dog" from Clark Connors and Dan Maloney. They're all using the dog phrase about each other, but I've only specifically seen New Japan refer to Coughlin and Kidd as the War Dogs. So what do you think?
I think it could morph into that. Right now, the War Dogs are Alex Coughlin and Gabriel Kidd, and they were wearing T-shirts that said that on it. And what we haven't seen is Maloney do. If Maloney and Connors come out in those same shirts, then we have our answer right there. But so far, they haven't. That could be a thing they do, and just say, "This is the new Bullet Club. These are the War Dogs. This is my crew." Again, as Finlay consolidates power by bringing in his own guys, trying to protect against the overthrow. I'm kind of curious to see where Chase Owens ends up in this, because with this current
Crown Jewel's about to get scuffed, buddy.
Well, you wonder if he's going to go the way of ELP in this, because I think the fans might be ready to at least treat him a bit like a baby. He's not going to be over like ELP is as a baby face, because he just doesn't have that kind of charisma.
You think he'd be like tagging with Tama Tonga in a couple of months?
Who knows? I don't know. Is there? I guess my question is there a place for him in this? Because really, he was attached to the Guerrillas of Destiny and Bad Luck Fale, none of which are either in Bullet Club or a part of the roster right now. As Fale is mostly working on Tamashi, that Oceania project they have, and his training school in New Zealand.
I immediately said no. But the more that I think about it, the more I like the idea of a general Bullet Club and then Finley having almost like an elite hit squad of his like 4 guys that when he wants the job done, he calls on these 4 rather than the rest of Bullet Club. But he's not against them if they fall in line, because it's just more people for his cause kind of thing.
Let's take a look at some comments here, because we have some pretty smart people watching this. So War Dogs, I believe, is just the tag team, according to Brad. There is one theme for War Dogs. If Maloney and Connors don't use that theme, they aren't War Dogs.
I was on that with you, and I needed to make sure that I was seeing it from all perspectives in terms of where people were coming from in this one.
And Brad also mentions, if you haven't seen the shows, the one from Hachioji and the one from Chiba, Kevin Kelly said he was working on the 17th commentary yesterday and the 18th today. So Hachioji yesterday and Chiba today. And
surprisingly easy, though, to watch without the English commentary, I will say.
Yeah, doesn't really bother me. And Brad mentions, I love when a wrestling company has a plan in place to split titles in a proper way. Amen. Yes, I like this. It is a clever way of doing it, and I mean that's really where it's going, isn't it? They're going to split these titles up. It makes more sense for Coughlin and Kidd to have the strong titles, although it could go either way. Just because I think those guys working out of the LA dojo will be in the United States more, and most of these strong shows, with the exception of the 4th and 5th of July, are taped in the United States.
Speaking of young talent, one of the other subplots of these Road to Strong shows is Hanma is insisting on trying to pin Shota or Ren or anyone in the G1 so that he can prove that he is worth being in the G1. And it is a noble, noble subplot, but it is also tragic. And unless real life consequences cause unfortunate things, I don't perhaps see that happening, and that is tragedy.
This is one of those times when you use the term ill-fated attempts. I don't think it's going to pan out for him. Although
he does look better than he's continually looking better in regard from the injury that he had years ago. And I never thought he would look at this level when he came back in the first place. So,
Honma, it's tough because Great Bash Heel was a pretty good tag team. Honma's never been a classic good worker, but there's just something about him. And he did a thing years and years ago in the G1 where he just couldn't win. He would come within a whisker of winning his matches, and then he would lose in the end. And it built up the entire G1. And by the end of it, the crowd was just dying for him to win one match, get 2 points. Come on, 2 points for Honma. And he has that about him. He can build that kind of momentum with the fans. And he's an oddly good worker considering how limited he is with his injury. The man was damn near paralyzed for a while. And
it's amazing that he's come back to the level that he has. To me,
he makes the best of what he's got, doesn't he? He's kind of an entertaining guy, and you even feel for him sometimes because he had mentioned he wanted to be the third guy with Okada and Ishii to go after the never openweight 6-man titles. And when Ishii was angry that Okada chose Tanahashi, Hanma was in the aisle there hoping it was going to be him named, and just the look of dejection when he wasn't. We all knew he wasn't. But you were like, oh,
like,
Milwaukee,
did I win the Oscar kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. But things are good for Hanma. He ended up marrying his nurse when he got paralyzed right there, and they've been together ever since. So he not only recovered from being paralyzed, he's got a new wife out of the deal, he got his career back. Things ain't so bad for Hanma.
So the Hanma subplot and the Bullet Club were the two driving subplots of this show. Let's be clear, everybody. There was next to no Forbidden Door previews, talk, chat, chatter, hinting, anything unless you were the backstage comments at the end of the 18th of the Blue Justice show. It was, we are done with this. We're going to go do our super show in which we are agreeing to show up for, and they'll tell us what we're doing, and then we're going to go off to CMLL and G1.
Yeah, we were looking at this. We also lost Doki for a couple of nights of the tour. He got sick, and out of an abundance of caution, as they say, he was pulled off a couple of cards. Nothing serious, apparently. Everything I'm hearing is that he'll be back and fine. It was just that he was running a fever, and they didn't want him. What's that?
By Forbidden Door, cornering SANADA against the Wiles of Hook.
Or I think I know there's going to be a Los Ingobernables presence in Fantastica Mania. Yes. So there's another thing after Forbidden Door. There is a Fantastica Mania run in Mexico. Of course, Fantastica Mania is a tour where the CMLL wrestlers come over to Japan and work with some of the New Japan guys. And that, for the first time I can remember, is going to be reciprocated. And some of the guys are going to be going over to Mexico and work a few shows, culminating with Arena Mexico on June 30th. I know Naito is going to be there. It would make a lot of sense if Doki were there too, given his history in Mexican wrestling. And finally, Doki would make it to a CMLL show. So I'm really hoping that hasn't been announced. Very little has been, other than that Naito is definitely going. But man, I would love to see, after all those years on the independent circuit, Kevin Doki, and see him walk down that aisle at CMLL in Arena Mexico finally. After all that, next to Naito as part of Los Ingobernables. That would really make me happy. Not as part of Los Ingobernables or either against him. I'm hoping that Doki makes the damn tour. I want him to work CMLL once before the guy dies.
Real quick, we have our guest in a second, but I want to ask you one more question. Is there a way to watch these Fantastica Mania shows through CMLL YouTube? Is that the 3-week delay? Is that AAA? I don't remember what that is.
It is a delayed thing on the CMLL YouTube page. So usually their Tuesday night shows at Arena Mexico go up, and then the Friday shows at Arena Mexico go up later. The Friday shows are the big ones. And there is a delay. I'm not aware of any other way to see the other shows on CMLL. So go to the CMLL YouTube page, and over the next couple of weeks, after the shows actually happen, should be able to see some of that. So some of those guys are going to be out coming up at the end of the month. I believe the Arena Mexico is the culmination of it, and that's on June 30th. So whatever they do at Forbidden Door, they can just catch a plane south after that from Toronto. So they can cover the entire North American continent, go all 3 countries. Let's do it.
So we're going to pause real quick on our coverage on the road tours and welcome our guest, Kevin Ely. Kevin Ely is from The Boom. He is stopping in tonight to preview the Forbidden Door and the road to Forbidden Door on AEW Dynamite. So we are going to welcome him on now. Kevin, how are you?
I'm good. Long time no see, guys.
Feels like it was just yesterday that we...
just feels like it was just yesterday we were talking, Jeremy.
We are covering the New Japan Strong shows, which is essentially just the road to the Independence Day shows on July 4th in Japan. Surprisingly, none of these shows really covered the Forbidden Door. We're just wrapping it up before we moved on to the Forbidden Door. Anything that with your... Okay, we'll pivot to this. Kevin, what New Japan have you been able to catch up on the road to Forbidden Door as an AEW watcher? Did you start with Dominion or any other shows before then to kind of get into high gear? And how's it been for you to just ease into it?
So I mainly I'm watching the big shows, the big tentpole shows, and I've been pretty okay keeping up on the major U.S. shows. But other than that, I've not. So this has been a process of almost re-educating myself because so much has changed in the landscape in like the last 6 months that there is a lot I feel like I'm catching up on. So it's been interesting to come up with that because I mean New Japan is still, if I when I talk to people and tell them I'm a wrestling fan for the first time, I say I love Japanese professional wrestling because it makes it sound much cooler and more refined. And New Japan is probably my favorite style and presentation of pro wrestling, but AEW is just what I've chosen to follow. Sorry, I was just trying to adjust my volume. I'll speak a little softer. So AEW is like what I choose to follow that, and so I've been keeping up with New Japan because it's still my favorite, but I'm really only keep up with the major shows. So as far as the details of like the programs and things, I'm really here to learn.
Well, that's the kind of show we have. So you come from one angle and we come from the other, and then we meet in the middle. And we have the perfect Forbidden Door preview when we do it this way. So I'm glad you're here because I want perspective of the AEW guy and how we all come together on this, because frankly speaking, it was a better build than it was last year, but there are still things that we look at here and there like, what are they going to do here? What's going on there? And Steven, should we move on to the Dynamite talk and kind of the build, or should we do anything that you want to finish up here on the Strong stuff?
We can go into the only other thing really mentioned for Strong is Yota Tsuji continuing to get this big push. And I wanted to get into that because I would like to see Yota Tsuji on Forbidden Door somewhere. But right now, most of the members I'm trying to see here, there have only been 4 matches officially announced anyway, right? And none of them involve Los Ingobernables. So we're hoping that there's some sort of LIJ presence on here. And last night on The Boom, you guys were talking about faction versus faction type of matches. And wanted to talk to Kevin and Jeremy, who both had some terrific ideas. If you haven't listened to the Boom, it's available on the Fight Game Media feeds, the podcast feed and all that. I encourage you to do so because there were some really interesting thoughts over there. What your ideas were to get some of these new stars like Yota Tsuji and big name guys like Tetsuya Naito onto this show. Hiromu Takahashi, for some, it really feels like he should be part of this. What are your guys' thoughts on how to get some of these guys in there, and who would be some good opponents for them on the AEW side of the equation?
When I think of Yota Tsuji, there was a guy that came to mind, and I'd like to see him with one of the big guys in AEW. You could go Big Bill, you could go Wardlow, you could go Keith Lee. I kind of just want to see him as a big guy go toe-to-toe with the other big guys. But I don't know if it's a better idea to just put him in a position to see how maximized his cheers would be in the States. Because we know how popular he is in Japan, but this is a perfect opportunity to really gauge how much that penetration has reached stateside. Because it was really just a month ago that this guy jumped on all of our radars and said, hey, here I am, pay attention to me. So I don't know what it should be with him, but I just want a big guy match. I want him in a scenario with another big guy looking dominant. Jake Hager, something like that.
Yeah, it would need to be somebody he could beat, because obviously you wouldn't want him to lose on Forbidden Door right there. So that is a little politics there. But he could be part of a six-man or something with the LIJ group too, right? That's a possibility, right?
Yeah, no, I definitely think so.
Yeah, Kevin, what are your thoughts on this one?
I agree. One of the things we said last night was, is what they have already with just these 4 matches and the 5th expected match of Zack Sabre Jr. and Orange Cassidy seems to be coming. That crosses the threshold, right? So they have cleared the bar on should I buy this show or not already.
Yes, yeah, right.
So everything else to me is gravy, and I know that there's rumblings or people have been saying that Tony Khan really wants these supercars this year. He wants to blow them out, but I'm fine with a little bit of restraint here and saying I don't need to have every possible dream match I can possibly get on this show. I would be happy with filling out the rest of the card with multi-man matches and getting as many faces out there as possible to see the interactions between different people. And LIJ would be a great way to do that and get Suchi in there, give Suchi a big win. Naito doesn't need to take the win if he's in the match. But last year, to me, one of the standout things was Shota Umino's U.S. coming out party as a real star, and I believe that helped, for American fans buy into, now I want to see what he's doing in New Japan now and make a big splash. And so I think it's important for New Japan to put someone like Suchi, especially Suchi in particular, to give him a showcase moment, a showcase win, to say, man, this is the kind of stuff. This is the guy you're gonna be hearing from on if you subscribe to New Japan World and follow this promotion, not just So I think it's important for them to show off this new talent to the new audiences. As far as opponents, I hate to throw out Lance Archer because all Lance Archer seems to do is come out and lose anymore. And I think he's pretty sick of it too. And technically he's not, he's AEW, but he's also New Japan, but I think that could be something, I don't know if it's a good use of the Mogul Embassy in this case to have Swerve and Cage and some of these big heavy hitter guys. I don't know if that's a good matchup with LIJ, but I love the idea of Swerve and Naito in the same ring, and seeing what they do. Because Naito's got a little bit, Swerve has a little bit of that Tranquillo kind of vibe to him. Yeah, the swagger. And I think that, that's the thing I want to see is these interesting matchups. I've got the dream matches and who wins those.
Totally.
I'm good on that. The rest is now I just want to see, these interactions. I want to see the things that are going to make me want to have a dream match next year.
So let's go over the Forbidden Door matches that have been announced so far. It's fair to say that we haven't actually said those out loud here on the show. So we have MJF against Hiroshi Tanahashi, which is interesting. It's the one thing I'll say about this. It depends on which Tanahashi you get. Are you going to have? Is he having a good knee day or a bad knee day? When Tanahashi's having a bad knee day, he looks an awful lot like Hiroshi Tenzan in there. Sometimes it's hard for him to have a really good match anymore when he's having a bad knee day. MJF is a terrific heel, one of the best in this industry, one of the best in a long time. Hiroshi's the classic babyface if there ever was one. It's a fair point to make that Hiroshi Tanahashi challenged for the AEW title last year and lost it on this show. So I'm not going to lie, I was a little disappointed that it was Tanahashi against MJF when it came to the AEW title. I love Hiroshi Tanahashi. He's an all-time legend. He's not as mobile as he used to be on that, and it's just difficult for him there. So we'll see how this goes. And we're also going to see...
That's interesting. On this one, like, I was talking to Kevin about this last night. I think this is going to be a really good match, and I think MJF is incredibly motivated to make it a good match because he's going to be in the ring with Hiroshi Tanahashi. I stewed on it, and I sat and I thought about it after the match was announced. I'm like, okay, why? And it's just, if MJF gets a great match out of this, he can put it in his hat. He can put a feather in his cap, and I think we all know that he can, but he loves his New Japan. We've seen him in his wrestling, that he's pulling those moves, and this might be a bucket list thing, and I don't know what other scenario we'd ever get to have it, so for a once-in-a-lifetime, sure, sign me up. I can look past the quibbles about Hiroshi Tanahashi and his health and everything. This has marquee all over it, even though there are two matches that are completely overshadowed.
Well, let me say one other thing, too. Is Tanahashi's an incredibly intelligent worker, and he reminds me in a lot of ways of Sting, and not just because of the legend status, but in that he might not be able to do what he used to do in his matches. But both men are incredibly smart about what they do and when they do it. Mm-hmm. Their timing of it, and maybe they don't do as much, but everything they do gets maximum impact. That I'm okay. I don't think this is going to be a bad match. I just keep thinking that, man, there's a roster full of guys. I don't know. And I just know that I saw Tanahashi not very long ago, and he really couldn't run. He couldn't.
There's a roster full of guys, but there is a clock on how long you have if you are ever going to do this match.
I guess so.
This match is never going to get better.
Well,
that's
this is probably the last chance. You know, like if you're gonna have MJF and Tanahashi, it's got to be now. It's only gonna get worse from here, probably, unless you just time it just right with him resting up or something. But I agree. My pick, I was the one out there saying let's make the case for MJF and Yano and just doing a straight up comedy thing, and I was half serious about that. But like, if I could pick anyone, it'd be like a Shingo, because like we were saying last night, I think the best case scenario for MJF on this show is to be dragged kicking and screaming into a show that he thinks he's above, and getting put in the ring with someone who's going to take him to the limit and having an incredibly physical, compelling match where he gets to show, because the real Max is out to show that he is, is that he is a generational talent. The character of Max is trying to be above it, but the real guy, he wants to go out there and have a banger, and I think it'll be good. I'm really interested to see how it plays, because I think MJF does well when he's proven to be a very physical wrestler, and in his best matches are the ones where he's like really being pushed physically, and Tanahashi's not really going to do that with him. So it'll be really interesting.
The other world title match on this show is going to be SANADA, who put out an open challenge, and it was answered by Jungle Boy Jack Perry. And I wanted to bring this match up first here, just because I feel, Kevin, that this is more of an angle than a world title match. And I'm curious to see, because they're making the point, and there it is on the screen, that Hook is going to be in Jack Perry's corner. There's a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of moving parts going on with Jack Perry, Hook, and on the other side, Luchasaurus, Christian, and all that. So there's very little doubt that Jack Perry is going to lose this one. I don't think the world titles are in any danger of changing hands on this show. That's not the point of it. But do you feel that there's going to be the beginning or a hint of an angle with Hook, or are they doing a big angle with Hook on this show? I guess I'm saying, are they planting the seeds here, or is this going to be it?
My gut says you won't see anything on this show that's blatant.
Yeah.
I think you'll see Valiant Jack Perry probably have a really good match with SANADA.
Oh, yeah.
Have a couple of really good hope spots. It'll probably overperform people's expectations, I think, especially for the U.S. fans who are like, wait, that's SANADA? That's not who I remember. And then he'll lose and probably get comforted by Hook. I think what they're doing is, I think this is leading towards Jack turning on Hook.
Yeah.
But I think it is like what we're doing right now is laying the seeds to have the relationship that's going to get broken later.
Okay. Yeah. It felt a little bit too early to do the big turn right there, but there's little doubt that with all of his talk about, you're my best friend, I want you in my corner, and the other thing about those promos, Kevin, is I think Perry might actually be pretty good at the smarmy role, which he hasn't done much. But some of that stuff, the way he was talking, right, you're my best friend, I was like, this could work. This could work.
Okay, this could work out, yeah. So
he could be a smug little prick. This could be okay, yeah.
Yeah. So
you've got the Dylan McKay, like when Dylan McKay goes evil, like he's been practicing, he's been watching the footage.
Yeah.
Very few things, by the way, guys, are as fun as when I have guests over and people around for AEW TV, and I point out that's Luke Perry's kid, and they're just like, "Get the hell out of here!" No, oh my God, it is. Look at him. You know,
there's two things I always bring up. That's Luke Perry's kid, and she's really a dentist in real life.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And Brad says this will be the Orange Ospreay match for 2023. That's an interesting point. The match that few people are expecting anything out of will impress everyone coming out of it. Jack Perry impresses me all the time. I agree. This could be the coming out party match. And I'll tell you what, if Tony is able to maneuver a guy into position every forbidden door to have a coming out type of thing on a consistent basis, then he's using this show in a really smart way for his company.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this match too. And SANADA is a really interesting champion because so far he hasn't had the epic title defenses that people would immediately put him like, oh man, this is the guy in IWGP. And him having this match doesn't necessarily help that knock on him. But then a lot of people tend to forget SANADA was the guy that beat Okada. Like, he was the guy when nobody else could. He was the guy that had Okada's number and took the title from him, and nobody's been able to take it from him since. I think
and that wasn't out of nowhere either.
Was that?
That wasn't out of nowhere either. The storyline of SANADA not ever being able to overcome Okada has been around for a long time.
Absolutely. And he had loser stink all over him going back to November. They were playing up a losing streak. He was down. He was depressed. This is all a build. And when we're looking at SANADA in this match, this is a progression point on a larger story for him. And so when we're all like, yeah, it's a foregone conclusion he's not going to lose this match, the story isn't really about it. It's about how he maintains that legacy, and he's trying to carry that title to mean something new and different beyond what Okada is doing. So he wants to give the new guy a title shot. He wants to give the junior heavyweight guy a title shot. He wants to do an open challenge at Forbidden Door. And then he's going to go into G1 presumably and just have a great run there, and maybe and I think have the best record of anybody in there to really say, like, okay, you may not think he's the guy, but we are doing everything in our power to tell you this is the guy, and he calls his own shots. That's the SANADA that I'm hoping is eventually portrayed, because that's what they're trying to do and not quite doing.
And for the podcast folks, Brad writes in, Jack and SANADA are very similar, both very, very good wrestlers that are very good looking guys. Oops, wrong company. That's true. That's for the other guys there. But from All Together Again, we learned that. But they don't have a ton of charisma outside the ring. Yeah, it's a problem with SANADA. It's always been a problem with SANADA. SANADA, until this breakthrough against Okada, had been the guy that kept banging his head against the ceiling of the very top guys. And of course, he had the win over Okada in the G1, where it was the longest G1 match that didn't go the 30-minute time limit to have a finish. It was something like 29 minutes and 50 seconds or something incredibly close to a draw.
Was that the one with the greatest 2 count in history?
Yeah, there were a few of those. Okada's one of the best guys at almost getting beat there is in the industry. So, he's been just on the brink right there. Geto, I think, has had in mind a run for SANADA for a long time and just maneuvered him into the spot. And now I mentioned that I thought, and I'm still kind of halfway standing by it, although I'm thinking about it as the event approaches, thought that Will Ospreay was going to win the G1. I just keep thinking that now I lean a little bit more toward Naito, just because somewhere along the line, Naito and SANADA have to wrestle for all the marbles, right? I mean, after all this, there has to be that match somewhere where it's Naito and SANADA for all the marbles. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes right there. I'm still thinking Will, but
are they sharing a block?
No, none of them are. No, none of those three guys are.
No, but there are strategic setups so that the semifinals and the quarterfinals, as we were talking in the Discord, if you put them in the right places, you can almost kind of read where they could go. You could come up with 4 or 5 different scenarios that all just have these completely amazing matchups that we haven't had since before the Cup, and just feuds that I'm very excited for that Sudoku puzzle.
SANADA is at the kiddie table. Basically, it's him, Chase Owens, and everybody else in his block is making their G1 debut. So he gets Ren Narita, Shota Umino,
Kaito
Kiyomiya, and Yota Tsuji, all in that block. So that's intriguing.
I keep looking at this image, and I go back to the MJF image, the one before, and SANADA and MJF are the two opposites of the same coin. They both have a perception of being a champion that they have to prove something, either to themselves or to everyone else. They both beat presumably the top guys in the company at the time when people were like, is he really going to beat the guy? And it was a question. They both come out with their robes in their free time. They both coming out in the suits. SANADA is the face idealization of the fighting champ, and MJF is the heel idealization of the unfighting champ. It is really amazing when you think about it, the similarities of the two champions right now.
Yeah, I think SANADA has a little more. I think everybody understands that MJF is playing this character, but that he's actually one of the very best in the business. And SANADA, I think there are still a lot of people that aren't sure SANADA is the right call for New Japan. I don't think too many people doubt that MJF is the right guy for main events. But I think there are still some NJPW people just thinking, SANADA? Really? That's the guy? So I think he's going to prove it. And I admit that I had my doubts about it a little bit right there. But he's winning
about
the
it all the time. The tickets are up. The sales are up. All the reactions to everything is that they like having SANADA on top.
Yeah. Okay, so sell me on. I meant to ask this last night, but I'm glad I'm on here with both of you to get it. Sell me on just 5 guys. Because when I saw the names that are in this faction that are now the faction of the champion of the company, and I think this is the lower rung of Suzuki Gun, plus and Taichi, who I consider not lower rung.
Okay.
And SANADA, and I'm thinking, wow, that's a 3rd string faction, if I heard it. But everything I hear is they're doing very well and they're very popular. So what am I missing?
I will say this, that Taichi has been having career years lately, and you said that you didn't think of him as bottom tier.
Yeah, I don't think of him as like that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's really had a career renaissance lately, especially he's improved every year since he's moved into the heavyweight division. The other one, Doki, has really come along, and for a while he was the guy in Suzuki-gun that protected everybody else and took the losses. He was the Bushi in Los Ingobernables. And since breaking away from that and joining just 5 guys, he's been pushed a little harder. And in the Super Juniors this year, he had a really good tournament. He has shown in a singles match with Tetsuya Naito that he can go with a heavyweight. And I think he is on the way up. It's going to take a little while because Geto does things slowly when it comes to this. He is the king of the slow burn, where it takes years for a guy to make it all the way up there. But I think Doki is headed that direction. The other one, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, has gotten out of his Suzuki-gun act. And there was an act to Yoshinobu Kanemaru. He was doing basically the same match each time, which is what they wanted from him. And I think he has broken out of that. He's gotten into more of a submission wrestling style. He's made the figure four a cornerstone. He has 100 ways to get in and out of it. And I think he has also been wrestling better now that he's broken away from that. I think they just need to freshening up. And they've changed their working style a little bit. I think they're working harder, and they're having better matches. So I would say that Kanemaru is a veteran. He's over 40 years old. He's got over 20 years in the business. You know, he's closer to the end of the career than the beginning of it, but he's seen a bit of a resurgence. Doki, I'd say, is the other way. He's on the way up. And then, like you said, you have Taichi, who's brought new things to the King of Pro Wrestling title. So that's my sell to you on that. An up-and-coming junior heavyweight, the classic veteran junior heavyweight who's having one more really strong run, and then two very strong wrestlers on top. Takamichi Noku is there to protect everybody and to talk, and he's effective at both. So he's the guy that can wrestle for a little while in a match, take somebody's finishing move, and it doesn't have to hurt anybody else. So there's my sell. Jeremy, did I miss anything?
There are a couple of things I'm just going to add for context. So around this time last year, New Japan announced that they were going to go with an initiative called New Japan Pro Wrestling 2.1. And that meant they were going to be changing a lot of things, including how they do the Young Lions program, just really redoing everything in light of the COVID protocols and just things that had aged out into some of that. We then cut to around November, December, and Taichi and Sanada have like a frenemies thing going on all throughout the World Tag League. Sanada is in it, Taichi is not, but he's still cheering him on, really just kind of, you're my bro, you're my dude. Great. So they plant the seeds there. So if you're watching, you know all these things are kind of happening. We then get to the Suzuki-gun breakup, which in and of itself was a tremendous event at the end of the year for Wrestle Kingdom. But what you ended up having there was not just what everyone assumed was going to happen, which was Zack Sabre Jr. was just going to take the faction over, and it was going to be all business as usual. They basically split this up into three different factions. The Just Four Guys essentially looked like the loser faction out of that because you didn't have Sanada. You basically had Taichi and a couple of guys. And then you got to the New Japan Cup, and then you had Sanada and Taichi realize that, we're friends, we're doing this, we're getting together, and Just Four Guys just became Just Five Guys. And essentially what you have is the Japanese version of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn reuniting, and now they're at the top of this faction, and they're kind of running the show, and all the fans over there are like, hell yeah, these guys have been running together for years all over Japan. Now they're doing it here in New Japan. It's their time. We are here for it. That is my sell for you, because they've been laying the groundwork for all this for a while, and just the reward and the payoff for the consistent fans is what they're looking for, even though when you're looking at it from the inside in, you're like, Just Five Guys. I really don't get it. I want to get it. It seems like everybody is already in on it. What am I missing? It's really just the connection and the investment. It's the long-term feel-good aspect of it. It's like, okay, these guys love hanging out with each other. Even in the backstage comments, Taichi's like, I'm gonna go home. I was off tonight. I was like, what was up with that? I was like, I don't know. You walked a different way out the entrance, and it threw me off. And I don't even know, man. I'm just gonna go get ready for the G1. I was like, all right, man, you do that. Have a great weekend. Like, they're friends.
Later.
Brad makes another good note here about Doki. He said he was an injury replacement a couple of years ago. He was never meant to be brought in. And so Gedo didn't know what to do with him, especially since he wasn't New Japan made. Yeah, he came in because El Desperado broke his jaw just before the Best of the Super Juniors. So he was brought in to fill in that spot. He had been wrestling in Mexico and was back home, and they just said, well, we need a guy quick. And he came in. Did well enough in that Best of the Super Juniors that they decided to keep him on and kept him in Japan. And it probably did take a while for him because he really didn't have a spot. He was just filling in for El Desperado for a while. So he's a good worker though. He's really good. And all those years on the Mexican Indies, It's a hard road. It's a really tough road to go for all those years trying to make it into CMLL and never getting accepted. And the guy can wrestle with anybody because, my goodness, if you're going to run into every style in the world, work the Mexican Indies for a while, you're going to run into anything and anyone out there. So, yeah. So anyway, there's our 2 world title matches. Now, of course, then we have the dream matches coming up. And before we get to that, though, because we're going to talk about those, of course, Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay, Kazuchika Okada and Bryan Danielson. Okada and Danielson is the all-time dream match. It can be a self-contained unit, one match. It doesn't have to have a ton of angles, although I guess Okada is going to be on Dynamite on Wednesday to call out Danielson, was how it was portrayed there, that he was going to come out and call out Danielson. So there might be a little bit of a confrontation there. It doesn't need a whole lot, though, does it, Kevin? I mean, at this point, they could have announced this match, and I would have ordered the pay-per-view, let alone Omega and Ospreay. Just 2 of the very best in the world that have been on parallel paths, meaning they're never going to cross. These guys are never going to face each other. We finally get to see it on Sunday.
Yeah. This is, this isn't a great comparison, but it's The Undertaker and Sting. It's, Bret Hart and Misawa, even though they did wrestle, I think at some point. But this is a generational dream match that needs no build. It's just the 2 names is the build. And I think even Wednesday, I think the build, personally, I think the build won't even be to build that match, but to set up what the rest of BCC is doing. So I was going to ask you guys in terms of that prediction, if this calling out Okada, I could see being, I'm going to call you out, you come out, and when you come out, you're going to realize you're surrounded by the BCC. And does that set up chaos? But then I think, well, what's the most, Occam's razor says that means chaos equals best friends and Rocky, or maybe Ishii, and I don't think we want to see that. That's not what we want, BCC to be doing, the other 3 guys in there. So are there any scenarios you could see out of that where Okada is bringing someone with him, and this segment is used to set up a multi-man match, or some other, maybe Eddie Kingston's involved in some way?
I think you could see something like that, definitely. And I think Ishii is the one, Jeremy, that comes to mind the most from Chaos that could come out there and help Okada. He's been the one that's closest to Okada within the Chaos faction all along. We mentioned on the show when I was on the boom there that Chaos is the least cohesive of all the units in New Japan. They
are chaotic.
they tend to go off on their own and handle their own business right there. But Ishii has been at Okada's side throughout. Yeah. And I definitely think you could see him come out. Now, who he ends up staring down could be just Claudio, which I would love to see that match. Like I've mentioned before, Claudio Castagnoli is a New Japan wrestler. He just doesn't know it yet. And I just feel like that could be the classic one. He's the one I actually won in G1 more than anybody else, actually. So
I'll shout out Paul Fontaine. He suggested Kingston and Ishii versus Mox and Claudio Castagnoli. Whatever Kingston has, he's got a window of Forbidden Door. He's got the Dynamite after, and laughably, the Collision on July 8th to do whatever he's got going on in AEW before he is off to Japan for good until at least the middle of August. So whatever they brought Kingston in for, it's got to be something pretty immediate. And I imagine something with Ishii, something with Moxley, given that they went in that direction so quickly and kind of haphazardly. It didn't really fit the angle. It's just like, oh, surprise, Eddie Kingston is here. Okay.
And Eddie does make a lot of...
still around.
and you can do the thing where eventually it leads to Kingston going eye to eye with Ishii. Maybe there's a malfunction somewhere in the match or something, because they are in the G1 in the same block. So you could always do a thing where, okay, we're going to butt heads a little bit because we're going to crash into each other in July. So
what if Kingston is on the same team as Moxley? Like they have a Moxley, Kingston, and Claudio, and they still can't work with each other. They can't deal with each other still.
It's possible. It's Kingston and Claudio on the same team. Yeah, I mean that's
they've done it before.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, that's possible. And there's so many people right now that you're wondering, are they going to be on this? What's Moxley's spot on here? What's the elite spot, for the love of God? We know that Kenny's in a huge match, of course. But you tell me that Adam Page and the Young Bucks aren't going to have anything to do with this? That I'm real skeptical
we're
of.
Less than a week away, and we don't know what the Bucks, Hangman, Eddie,
maybe they have a
BCC.
Bullet Club match.
Maybe
it's them against Finlay and a couple of the War Dogs.
Yeah, could be. I mean, there's just so many directions they could go, and we just don't know. There's a lot of card to fill out so far. There's a lot of card to fill out.
So Brad just
one of the scenarios I had.
Eddie,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Kevin. What?
That they just added an Eddie Speak segment to Dynamite. You just put that on the screen.
Brad
that makes me think that maybe Eddie's not going to be involved in this. That segment. Maybe he's just coming out to call out somebody. I mean, he could just come out and be like, Ishii, let's go, partner. And that's it. Like, that could be the whole segment.
Yeah. I've always wanted to take a chunk out of you. Let's do it. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to peel back the onion on match card renders, but if you pay attention to this match card from Eddie Kingston for Dynamite, and then you pay attention to this match card for Eddie Kingston for Independence Day, it seems like he took the photo on the same night.
Yeah.
Probably did. Yeah, do the backstage
the
photo session
beard there.
So, do you, Kevin? We mentioned the Elite. We mentioned these other guys there, the Moxley and Castagnoli and things. Do you have a theory on where the Bucks could end up, or Adam Page, or are you like us, where it's just like, geez, there's so much of the roster that's free that could be part of this that it's hard to pin down?
I have no clue, because especially with the Bucks, and I think you guys have pointed this out, that like the heavyweight tag team scene seems pretty slim. Mm-hmm. Now, you could, because of like Aussie Open is out, but you could have Akira and TJP go against the Bucks as an undercard version of the Omega Ospreay. And just pair them up with the juniors, because I mean they're.
Put Jeff Cobb in that match and Hangman as well.
Yeah, Hung Bucks against those two and Jeff Cobb, that'd be a great match.
Yeah, I think
that would be the kind of thing, if you're not going to put Omega, I mean not Omega, Hangman, like I'm still mad we didn't get Hangman Okada last year. But if you're not going to put Hangman in that type of match, I think just put him in a 6-man where it's just going to be a great match, and I think that's, I like the idea of those undercard matches that mirror the main event counterparts.
Sure. No, I think I like that a lot. I think that would be a great way to do it right there. And I mentioned that, I thought we're probably going to get Orange Cassidy and Zack Sabre Jr. That seems to be the way it was going. I thought we were going to get TV title versus TV title with Samoa Joe.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something that they will do in England, because they have a big show going. That's how I'm going to cover my ass, because I was wrong. Yeah. And so they're going to do it then. That's when they're going to do it. Yes, that's it. But we're probably going to get that one. There's going to be more. It's hard to think that the tag team titles wouldn't have something to do with this, but. Yeah. And then, of course, go ahead, Jeremy.
I'll throw out a match, scenario I mentioned last night on the Boom, and that involves the IWGP Women's title scenario. And we've seen Willow Nightingale have a couple of run-ins with the Outcasts and Toni Storm and Ruby Sky, along with Sky Blue. The scenario I posited was Toni Storm challenging Willow Nightingale for her title, thinking that Willow Nightingale would be some kind of easy pickings going into Forbidden Door, and Willow Nightingale beating her on a title defense rather than it being a challenge by Willow against Toni Storm that she would lose. It's all about the perception of the heel being over cocky and realizing her opponent is the real deal. And I think that's the way that we need to go with that one.
That'd be smart. That would be the best match possible, really, for Willow in that sense. Tony's the best worker AEW has, so female worker that AEW has. So I would be into that. I'm just happy to see those two in a big spot too. That would make me happy.
I'm going to add to that, actually, now that I thought about it. You do the run back at All In at Wembley, and then after Tony beats Willow, we have a Mercedes Moné return.
If she's able to, why not? Let's do it then. That would be terrific. And Brad has a thought here. Great Khan, Jeff Cobb, and Hanare against the Hung Bucks.
He's thinking about that while we're talking.
Hanare can eat the pin and allow Omega to beat Ospreay to make the series 1-1 Elite versus UE. That's a beautiful segment, Brad. You're not even one of the hosts of the show. We probably should be, because that's going to take us right to the last match to talk about, which is Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay. I agree that Kenny is going to win this thing again, because I think Ospreay's triumphant moment is going to come in his home country, in Wembley. And I threw a theory out there that Ospreay loses this one. He's dejected, he's down and out, but he steels himself. We get the Rocky training montage, the whole spiel, and he wins G1, and maybe even has to defend the mythical title shot against Kenny Omega. Who wants to get back on top and at Wembley. I just have it for all the marbles, doggone it. The U.S. title, the title shot at Wrestle Kingdom, the whole spiel. So I kind of feel that is while Will Ospreay is my current favorite wrestler in the world, I think he's going to do another loss to Kenny Omega here in this one, especially with Will playing up the heavy heel Canada sucks angle.
Yeah, that's been something to see. That's been fun. I really like that idea a lot. I know Thanks. You guys have brought up that you both are pretty still on board with the idea that Will is the man in New Japan come January, and that everything's building to that, and that you probably want to protect his big singles matches between then. But I think if he is really going, just from a booking and character perspective, as a fan of both companies and the stories they're telling, not necessarily any one booker's plans, but for me, the character of Will Ospreay, if his destination is to get to Wrestle Kingdom and win the IWGP World Title, he's got to put this feud behind him first, to me. Mm-hmm. And I think losing at Forbidden Door and going through, climbing that impossible mountain of the G1, and then putting that on the line. I'm going to risk it all. I'm double or nothing. I'm leaving all my chips on the table, because every match I'm going to have is for everything or nothing. To then have that big thing and 60,000 people in his world. Number one, I think if Will Ospreay has anything to do with it, that's what he would want to do.
Yeah, I imagine imagine how that England crowd would be for him in that match. Oh my God.
The argument against it is you're putting a non-AEW person over to close, like theoretically to close the show, or like your biggest deal on your show as a non-AEW guy. But I think Tony, number one, I think he thinks a little differently about those kind of things. And the other one is I think he's thinking, maybe Will Ospreay will be an AEW guy at some point.
I want to ask you this.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Let's build some goodwill with our boy Will.
This might be a good guy to make happy.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this. Is it possible that we are looking at this the wrong way, because we're looking at Wembley or the 60,000 in England as a one-time thing, and we may be going back and doing this next year, in which you can let this whole Will Ospreay thing breathe. He can have his loss, and he can have some type of different win. And then next year, he has that main event spot where he went big, main event, 60,000 people. Is it about now, or do you want to save that Will Ospreay when he's under your contract? You can do everything that you are already doing now, but you can maximize it and then keep that momentum rolling.
Yeah. Even if it's not Wembley,
other thing. If only one time.
Yeah. Even if next year is Craven Cottage, that's still a big house you've got to fill. And I see what you're saying there. And typically, when I'm trying to predict booking, I'm always more short-sighted than either Tony or Ghetto, especially Ghetto.
And I look at the long game. I always do. Like, what if the home run here? Sorry.
And, that's fair enough, Jeremy. I'll say this, though. I think that if you do set this up and make Will happy with the idea of maybe signing him next year, that type of thing, Will Ospreay on top against another heel will still be a monster draw next year, especially perhaps if he gets the big win in Wembley. And it's the guy, nothing makes people believe in a good guy more than him coming through in a big moment. So if he comes through against Kenny after being beaten down at Wrestle Kingdom and here at Forbidden Door comes back and in front of his home people, he gets it's because of you. I'm here in front of my people. Then I think you could bring him back next year against somebody else. And he says, I need my folks again, man. I'm in a bad spot. This guy's tough. I need my people again. And it'll be a great
big match with MJF.
Hey, Will can do just about anything, and we're finding out that MJF pretty much can too when he gets time to think about it. So he's a hell of a man. I can't. It's hard to think of a better heel than what MJF has done in the last few years in pro wrestling. Just staggering.
So Kenny Omega in this match at the end of Double or Nothing, he said something very interesting, and that he needed to go to Japan to contact some people, and he left, but that really hasn't been paid off yet. And if there is a payoff to this, and they're hinting it, I would tend to think that Forbidden Door might be the payoff. And I threw something out there to Kevin Ely last night that Will Ospreay, more than likely, would be flanked by the entirety of United Empire when he comes out there if he's got a main event thing. Maybe instead of the Young Bucks and Hangman Page, Kenny Omega is flanked by one Kota Ibushi instead, and he is the one to corner Kenny Omega, and that leads into some other events later on into the summertime. That was kind of the big surprise reveal that I was like, if you really wanted to just blow everyone away during Forbidden Door and give them something that they weren't expecting, Kota Ibushi in the main event is exactly what you do.
All right. Well, we have a couple of comments I want to mention. Colin Matthew thinks this could go to a time limit draw. That would actually make it 1-1-1 if they chose to do it that way, which is an interesting point.
1-0-1?
It would be idea
assuming that Ospreay wins
Kenny won this one. If Ospreay wins in England, that would be a win, a draw, and a loss for each guy, and which is an interesting point. Could be a 30-minute time limit on that one, I would imagine. And then, do you think Jay White and Juice get added? Boy, and we've talked about that on the show a couple of times. That's tricky, isn't it? Because Bullet Club Gold is one thing, and then the current Bullet Club with David Finlay is another, and they can't coexist in a coherent storyline because Finlay was overthrew Jay White. They should not be able to be in the same building together.
You shouldn't even have Kingston anywhere near either of those guys either.
No, you shouldn't even have Kingston on the AEW show in the first place.
So, I
guess unless he's representing New Japan now.
Yeah. I mean, kind of.
There's a lot of weirdness going on with that. So, if they can't be part of the regular Bullet Club, so I don't know. I mean, I guess you could do something along the lines of Finlay and somebody against Jay White and Juice just for that. I guess you could do that.
If it were me, I would spend a backstage segment settling their issues and coming to some type of understanding so everyone understands what this is going forward, and just do 2 minutes. And sometimes, if that's what they want to do, but they do need to get out of the ambiguity between Bullet Club and Bullet Club Gold, because they are not aligned with each other, but no one is truly clear on that. And that is just a mess up because of Jay White not going to WWE. It's unfortunate. Nobody's at fault. But this may be the opportunity to really just say, okay, here's the status quo going forward.
Yeah, the only thing is, I just don't see how those guys coexist character-wise, Finlay and Jay White, just because Jay wouldn't be second in command in Bullet Club. And I also don't think he would just say, oh, well, I guess I see why you whacked me in the head with a shillelagh. I guess it's all right. We'll be buddies now. It doesn't really fit the Jay White character much. And so I think that one's a bit of a pothole there. That would be tricky, and they might just avoid it altogether.
Yeah, and and even though this is a co-promoted AEW New Japan show, I think you'd probably agree that AEW is more invested in this than New Japan in terms of it being their show, and that feels like a very New Japan centric angle to run.
Yeah,
in terms of like for the AEW fans, it's just going to be kind of confused. It's not going to be a great introduction to what New Japan is to get in the nuance of like these things.
Yeah.
To me, the thing I thought was if you really wanted them on there, I mean, you could do FTR, but that's really more an AEW match. If I felt like you could probably get away with Kenta, even though he's enough disconnected from
He's Kenta.
Yeah, he's Kenta. Like he's kind of a free space on the board. I feel like you could have him show up for Jay, and do like Kenta, Jay, and Juice against FDR and Punk, and then have some Kenta Punk interactions, but not really have the match depend on it.
That'd be the best case scenario.
And then when Kenta returns his next interactions, you could have a deal where Finley's like, what the hell, dude? Like, what are you doing? And Kenta's just like, I'm Kenta. What are you gonna,
Yeah. It is tricky because Kenta sided with Finlay against El Phantasmo and all that. So there's a lot of moving parts like there. And like Jeremy mentioned, like none of this was supposed to happen. I mean, Jay White was supposed to be in WWE, and then we don't have this thing. So
that's another guy is El Phantasmo. Like that's another guy that would be great to have on the show. I think he'd be someone that would blow people away. He was incredibly entertaining last year with Sting.
Oh yeah.
He could 100% be on a team with the Bucks and Hangman Page against the Bullet Club team.
Yeah, right. And half the people tuning in would think he's Logan Paul. So
yes, that is true. That's a very good point. Yeah, my girlfriend thought the same thing. Now she can't. Now nobody can unsee it. Nobody can unsee it. He's the Lost Paul brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. What did she say he was? He was like Methy Paul. Was how he looked? That was how my girlfriend put it. As El Phantasmo was Methy Paul. Methy Paul.
We got a couple other matches that we can kind of read some tea leaves on here.
Mm-hmm.
So we got the Shibata and Garcia potentially. I wouldn't be against it, but that feels more Ring of Honor build.
That feels like a Death or Dishonor setup.
Yeah, there you go. But Orange Cassidy and Zack Sabre Jr. is a dream match that I never knew that I wanted.
Right.
And so I am on board with that. And then we also have Lei Suzuki Sex Gods versus Action Andretti, Darius Martin, and AR Fox.
What the hell is this
Steven,
match?
you mentioned a storyline match earlier on Forbidden Door. This too feels like a storyline match. Kevin, what do you think about it?
Man, I don't know. The only thing I can think is, number one, this tells me Suzuki's in town and he'll probably be on the show in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So are they just doing it to set up Chris Jericho having another like I'm gonna wrestle younger than I look match with let Suzuki beat me up kind of thing, or one thing I could see. Here's one thing I could see just from the storyline perspective. I could see them losing. Well, I don't know about losing. I don't know about losing those guys, but I could see some tension. I could see some tension happening with Suzuki, and Suzuki being like, "Screw you guys," maybe walking out on the match, something like that. And Chris Jericho is so mad that he cuts a promo at Dynamite with Lexi or Renee or something, and being like, "Suzuki, I'm the legend. I'm a wizard. You do not do this to me. At Forbidden Door, I challenge you, Minoru Suzuki versus Sammy Guevara." And Guevara gets roped into having to get beat up by Suzuki.
Wait just a darn minute here.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I am going to be a father. I cannot be.
I had a thought, and it was all predicated on how quickly they're going to do this slow burn between Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara. Does kind of seem like they are pointing at All Out in Chicago for a blow-off match between these two. So how quick do you do the slow burn? If you do the burn and the breakup now, you could do Suzuki, Ren Narita, El Desperado, Sammy Guevara versus Jericho, Daniel Garcia, and Matt Menard and Angelo Parker. Or you could do Jericho, Sammy Guevara, and Daniel Garcia versus the Speaking Strong Style 3-on-3. So it just kind of depends on where they want to go with that. But I do think come 4 days later, Suzuki and Jericho are going to be on opposite sides of the ring from each other.
Yeah, and Brad mentioned Jericho and Sammy against Suzuki and Ren Narita perhaps at the pay-per-view coming out of this, which would be a good match. That would be pretty solid stuff.
Yeah, that'd be a lot.
Speaking of strong style,
and Narita could probably take the fall on that one, or Jericho and Sammy could if you just wanted to blow the whole thing off. Then one of them could lose and then turn on each other. That's possible. So we'll see. Good luck, Sammy. Good luck to you. I wish you all the best, Sammy, in that one.
So does that mean Luchasaurus is going to have a match with his title on the show?
No.
I think the TNT doesn't. The TNT title doesn't cross the forbidden door.
No.
I would give anything at all for Luchasaurus versus Yota Tsuji, and Yota Tsuji beats him.
Oh, my
I would give anything in the world for that.
Oh.
That would be cool.
They should have a faction where Luchasaurus, Angelo Dawkins, Christian, and Marty Jannetty is leading this faction of all the people that hung on by their fingernails to much more talented wrestlers for as long as they possibly could. That'll be
I'm still trying to find a match for Yano, so maybe that's
there he is right there. I joked around about some of that, like Angelo Dawkins. I thought if they had replaced Angelo Dawkins with another guy in the Street Profits, it might be 3 weeks before anyone noticed. Because everyone just looks at Montez Ford the whole time, and I just feel like, like in the Luchasaurus, it's like, man, he's just, Perry carried him, but they've been teasing that Luchasaurus might be going babyface on. I thought when he won that title, by the way, last week, that they teased a babyface turn there. The way Christian was acting,
the way that Christian held up
in character like an idiot,
I like that.
Yeah, so who knows? We'll see how that turns out. But interesting stuff here. I do think this will end up being Jericho and Suzuki on opposite sides at the pay-per-view. Well, good luck, Minoru.
Yeah,
do your best, buddy.
All right. So, do we think the House of Black has a match on the Forbidden Door?
Wow, that's a good question. House of Black versus House of Torture. Either way, the house wins.
The house always wins.
The house always wins.
The house always wins. The Mist versus the Wrench. Yeah, that would be. Yeah, you could do that.
I still got my dream of Darby and Sting versus Hiromu and Naito.
I love that so much.
Even though Naito in the backstage comments on the 18th made it abundantly clear that his next date, wink, wink, was in Mexico for CMLL, and I'll be in Mexico for CMLL. That's my big next date. I'm just gonna go home now. I'll see you later.
No, not gonna be doing anything else. Just hang out. Yep. Yes, sir, Bobski. Yeah. Definitely not getting on a long flight. No. But they could definitely do something like that. That would work.
The Acclaim, Keith Lee, Swerve. There's all these guys on there, and we're getting down.
The only thing is, I wouldn't mind if it were Naito and Tsuji or something like that. That LIJ thing, because I really want to see Hiromu Takahashi against somebody really good from the junior heavyweight division.
Yeah.
Whether that's Darby, I would love that. I would love. He's mentioned the initial F in some of his promos, although he didn't last week. So I don't know. Maybe that's something that fell through. But he actually had a lot to do because he was in his hometown, and Hiromu was. Had a lot going on there, and he was also plugging a Dragon's Gate date that he's going to do later on. So Hiromu's got a lot of irons in the fire. But he's mentioned F, and that seems Fenix. Which, I mean, if you want to put Fenix and Hiromu out there,
sure, man.
I wondered if they might be saving that match for that All-Star Junior Heavyweight tournament in August.
He's got to wrestle somebody then.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I would suggest, and this is a little bit of probably wish fulfillment booking, was paying off that collision angle with Andrade by having Andrade show up to challenge House of Black for the trios title, and his partners being Naito. Like the dream would be Naito, Rush, and Andrade reforming the original Ingobernables, but having some sort of like LIJ partners for Andrade. To go against the House of Black would be a pretty awesome deal.
For the folks watching and listening, by the way, when Andrade was La Sombra in CMLL, that was a badass dude. He was so good.
He was amazing.
He was so wonderful.
Nakamura and
what a heel! God Almighty, what a heel he was. Yeah, that would be fun. There's so many options. There's just so many ways this could go. And now that we know that this is going to be an annual thing, you don't have to do all of it right now, admittedly. Nope. But, there's a lot to be excited about with this. And just want to mention to everybody here listening and watching that next week on the show, we are going to have a guest as well. We're thrilled to have Kevin here to help us preview this. Coming off of it, Mel Gray from Power Bombshells is going to be in attendance at Forbidden Door there in Toronto, and then she's going to join us on the show to tell us all about the live experience there being on being at Forbidden Door. So we get Kevin's AEW expertise here, and then we're going to get her reactions to seeing it live next week. Just thrilled for both of those things. So I'm glad we have this covered from all angles. We're on this like cheese on a pizza.
Yeah.
So, just Just let that sink in for me.
Yeah. It did. It did. Is there really anything else that we can tea leaf about Forbidden Door? I feel like we've scratched every surface that we can possibly scratch. The only other thing is that Tanahashi's promo again on MJF was absolutely delightful. Go find it on YouTube, wherever, where he just can't remember his initials. Classic Tanahashi, classic trolling, all about it.
There you go. Oh, and Mel's waving to us. Hi, Mel. There you go.
Mel.
I'm very glad you're here, and we're really looking forward to having you on the show next week. It's, Mel's went to the original Forbidden Door last year, and we got to hear her perspective on that. So she gets to see both of these shows over the last couple of years. So
should we go over the July 4th and July 5th cards real quick?
Let's do that. Yes, and then a couple of things to mention about the Blue Justice show, and then Hachioji also. But let's do this. Let's talk about July 4th and July 5th, Korakuen Hall, NJPW Strong Independence Day. These are separate pay-per-views. Separate pay-per-views on NJPW World.
It's going to cost you about $28 for both if you want to watch them, and they will be locked as a pay-per-view until September 10th. So the old model of pay-per-views being available a couple of days after you buy them is no longer the case. And there are things about these cards that I like, and there are things about these cards that are decidedly not for me, but we will get there when we get there.
So let's start with this one. So we have, as you can see here on the screen, they started off with a little six-man that involves some talent that's not in New Japan normally. Ryusuke Taguchi, Oscar Loibe, and Yo taking on, that is Takahiro Katori. He is from Pro Wrestling Eagle, an independent company that I have barely heard of. But, he's going to be there. We'll see what he's got. I'm not familiar with Pro Wrestling Eagle or Katori, so this will be a fresh set of eyes on this guy as far as I'm concerned. And then Kengo and Dragon Libre are part of Pro Wrestling Freedoms, which is Jun Kasai's promotion. Promotion that Jun Kasai runs, so that's why they're there. So Kengo, by the way, is mostly indie, but he works for Kasai a lot. Apparently, Dragon Libre is a Freedoms Pro Wrestling Freedoms guy. So a little bit of getting Jun Kasai's people in there on the undercard. So there you have it. And then we have the Sauce, Alex Zane, back in Japan. Haven't seen him for a minute. Ryohei Oiwa and Lance Archer. Against J.R. Kratos, Jarrell Nelson, and Royce Isaacs. So that'll be undercard six-man.
Did you hear the tag team name that Lance Archer gave himself and Alex Zane?
What?
The Murder Sauce Monsters.
Okay.
Sure.
Why not?
Evan, do you know the story about Alex Zane and Taco Bell?
I do not.
Okay, so apparently Alex Zane is the only person that Taco Bell in Japan follows. And so he has made a gimmick out of this. And so he is the Sauce Alex Zane. And there we have gone to the Murder Hawk Monster, the Murder Sauce Monsters.
I love it.
Alex Zane is going to be doing a lot of pins on behalf of Lance Archer in the near future.
Yeah.
I think that's true. So, there's that one. So we got the little six-man down there. And then Kosei Fujita against Filthy Tom Lawler. And feels like a win for Filthy Tom right here, but it'll be good to see him back in Japan. I really liked him in the G1 last year. Tough break. A 32-man field, and Tom wasn't in it. But if you look at the G1 field, the company's just friggin' loaded right now. Who do you take out? But, so that was something, as I thought Lawler did a very good job in G1 last year and earned another spot. But, just no room at the end right now. But against Kosei Fujita, he'll probably get a good match. He can win.
I love that he's got the haircut, Kosei Fujita, that says, I'm no longer a young lion. I have
I have hair now. Always important. So, yes, and then Rocky Romero and Eddie Kingston against Kenta and Geto. And, of course, we're going to preview these shows a little bit more next week, too. But Rocky and Eddie, interesting little combo right there. And Kenta and Geto. So I like Rocky and Eddie's chances.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one.
Geto's there to protect. And, of course, we mentioned 2 title matches between the same 2 teams. So we have the Strong Openweight Tag Team Championship match on night 1. Gabriel Kidd, Alex Coughlin against Yoshihashi and Hirooki Goto. So only the Strong Openweight Tag Team titles on the line in this one. The IWGP titles will be on the line on night 2.
I'm gonna make a wild, flailing guess and say that the War Dogs may be walking away with some blue leathered on that night.
Yeah, I think it's the right move for guys based in the LA dojo to hold the titles on a show that is most often happens in the United States, strong tapings and things. Brad, by the way, going back to the Alex Zane thing, we forgot a very important point, Kevin, is that most of his big moves are named after Taco Bell food items.
Like
so, I mean, the man lives the gimmick. The man lives the gimmick.
Yes, like a chalupa.
So what else we got here? We go. Oh,
okay.
Now let's talk. We have
this?
Jon Moxley and Homicide on one side. On the other side, El Desperado and the Crazy Monkey, Jun Kasai.
Oh my Lord!
If you've seen Jun Kasai, he is one of the all-time deathmatch legends, and he's worked for all the big deathmatch companies. Big Japan. He's worked for what was it? You know, the Big Japan is the main one that destroy themselves and all this stuff. And then he's worked for Pro Wrestling Freedoms is another one of him. This man, his scars have scars, and this is going to be some sort of deathmatch thing. And apparently Kasai, I haven't seen a lot of this guy because this isn't my cup of tea. Deathmatch wrestling isn't really what I enjoy. But apparently he's better at knowing when to do things instead of just piling up things and jumping into them, which is what most death matches have turned into, where here's some light tubes, here's a barbed wire board, here's a bunch of thumbtacks, and now I'm just going to do sentons into them for 10 minutes for no reason. Apparently this guy can actually work a wrestling match in a death match. I'm not sure it matters. I don't know. I guess it's going to be what it is. I'm not a death match wrestling guy, guys. So wrestling is a variety show. If you don't like one thing, you like the next thing. This is going to be a match that I personally will tolerate more than enjoy, but there it is.
According to the graphic, it will be an exciting encounter.
Encounter.
Doomsday.
A doomsday.
The tears are real, but the laughter will be fake for me.
Yeah. I just love this visual of Jun Kasai like he's holding an American flag.
That's true, yeah.
His scar pockmark when he came out on the 17th on the house show in that broad daylight, and he was just walking down there. He looked like that Batman villain who notches a scar on his body for every time he kills somebody.
Yeah.
Mr. Zaz. It's everywhere. It is literally just like, you look at this guy and you've never seen him in deathmatch, you're like, this is a deathmatch wrestler, and I am afraid of him.
This is one of those matches where I feel like we're all Renee Young.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like we're all just like, oh no.
So
her Twitter is worth a follow just for when Moxley is doing a match like this, because you'll just see just one word. God damn it!
What makes it even more amazing is the build to this match was Moxley saying, "Go get a partner. I got Homicide. I'll see you then." And Desperado going to a park with a gift and a cup of coffee for Jun Kasai and his young daughter, where he's like, I found myself in a bit of a pickle and I could use your help. And he's like, well, okay, but we should make it more interesting. This isn't interesting enough for me. We got to make it worse. And Desperado's like, oh, well, guess I really got into it this time.
Yep.
So yeah, that's and Brad mentions that he is a brilliant storyteller with the plunder. So all right, well, I guess we're going to find out. We'll all find out together. So and then they have the junior heavyweight tag team titles on the line. Francesco Akira and TJP, the champions, against Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney of the new Bullet Club, the new version of Bullet Club. And so that is going to be a big match on the show there, a title match for the IWGP Junior Tag Team Championship.
I think this is going to be their coming out party, Clark Connors and Driller Maloney.
Could very well be. Let's see. And then night two, we go on to night two, and it is, again, starts with a match with some independent talent. Dragon Libre is back, Hattori is back, and Rekka is the third man that time against Taguchi, Bolton Oleg, and Master Wato. So there you have it. That's them. Oscar Loibe taking on JR Kratos. So Loibe getting a bit of a singles match here. Kratos is obviously going to win this thing, so it's all a matter of how Loibe looks while doing the job.
This is interesting. I'm going to throw this in there. JR Kratos is a local Bay Area wrestler, and whenever New Japan would come, he would do the security and lines, and he worked from the bottom up to get a spot in this roster beyond just being a young lion, because he had a family and he was working dates, and him making it to Japan and working strong shows for New Japan. We talk about guys like Tom Lawler, like achieving their dream. This is 100% one of those same guys. And I'm happy that I'm able to tell that context of the story, because this guy grinded to get here.
That's awesome.
Very good. Colin, by the way, letting us know Rekka is great, by the way. So we have something to look forward to in seeing him right there. And the fun thing about these independent guys, very briefly before I move on, is that this is by far the biggest showcase they'll have. And being at Korakuen Hall on a New Japan show and Ghetto's watching, so I have a feeling we'll probably see the very best that they have to offer right there. And then here we go. Now, we don't know what this is going to be here. The next one is Yo and Rocky Romero against Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney. There's no word that the champions, whoever wins on night one, defends the title necessarily on night two. They could announce that. They haven't. But this could be Yo and Rocky Romero facing the new IWGP champions.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to see how it turns out.
Belt or no belt, this is going to be a spotlight show for Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney. I do wonder why they put the belts back on Catch 2-2 after the Time Splitters had it for a couple of months. If they were just going to flip it forward.
Yeah, the Jet Setters, I believe.
The Jet Setters, sorry. The Jet Setters. I'm a little tired.
It's okay.
But yeah, so it might be just a case of piggyback because those are titles that they are happy to piggyback from team to team to team. Yeah. And Catch 2-2 had them for a considerable amount of time beforehand. I'm leaning towards them winning the titles, but even if they didn't and they got a bounce back win and beat Rocky Romero or Yo afterwards, wouldn't shock me at all.
Okay. After that, we have Tomohiro Ishii, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and the DKC, who will probably put his rather embarrassing-looking karate on in Korakuen Hall. I'm not a DKC guy. I'll just say I don't think the guy's that good. But here we go against Tom Lawler, Jarrell Nelson, and Royce Isaac. So Team Filthy against two members of Chaos and a guy who does karate chops that couldn't break an egg.
Wow, savage. I don't have anything to add. You got anything, Kevin?
Yeah. I'm not really familiar. I've seen the DKC a little bit, but he hasn't stuck with me.
He's a guy. He's a very good coach for new talent at New Japan.
Fair enough. Team MDK represented here. Bad Dude Tito and Kosei Fujita against Alex Zane and Lance Archer. Of course, the Murder Sauce Monsters. This feels like a win for Murder Sauce, but there we go. We'll see how that one looks. It's certainly a team that I did not picture. I think if you gave me a list of wrestlers and to make a tag team out of, it would have taken me a long time to get to Alex Zane and Lance Archer, but it might work out.
If it were me, I'd be putting a lot of focus on Bad Dude Tito in this match. Every time I see him, his stock is going up and up and up, but given that Lance Archer is in this match and they need to make Lance Archer happy, I kind of am going to assume that we're going in a different direction with this.
Ryohei Iwa and Homicide. And this is another tag team that would have taken me a long time to get to. Against TJP and Francesco Akira. Again, this depending on who wins the titles there. Again, they didn't say that the titles would be on the line in night two. So they could be just non-title matches here. And it makes sense considering who the opponents are. But this will either be the champions reaffirming that they are the top team in the junior heavyweight division or a get-right type of win for Catch 2-2.
Every time I see Homicide in a match card, I think back to our review of Battle in the Valley, where I was sitting live in the show. He had a hardcore match with Tom Lawler. He lost the match by going through a table, taking the pin, and then immediately getting up and walking away and going to the back.
Yeah, Homicide is... Yeah, boy. All right, and here you go. Bishamon, Yoshihashi, Hiroki Goto. This time the IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team Championship on the line against Gabriel Kidd and Alex Coughlin. My instincts tell me that they're going to go 1-1 here, and one set of belts is going to go over to the War Dogs, and Bishamon will keep the other. My guess is that this is a Bishamon win. Don't know. Again, we're going to preview this a little bit harder next week there, but So night two, another match between these two, and it all leads to absolute chaos in the main event. El Desperado, John Moxley, in the rather ominous-sounding Final Death. My God. Final Death, and I guess it's no disqualification, anything goes. God only knows what these two will do to each other type of match, right?
Yeah, this is going to be something. I think the mops and the buckets will be out afterwards, if I had any guess.
And this is the next day.
The next night.
So they're having a match with Jun Kasai, and then they're doing Final Death.
Yes, they are.
The next night.
Oh, man.
John Moxley decided to do the 1-2 punch. If you're going to get this all out at Desperado, they're going to get it all done now. Like he doesn't want to be sewing and cauterizing.
Right. There's no point in healing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, might as well just get it all out of the way. The thing is, he might still be bleeding from the match on the 4th when he gets to the ring for this one. So,
and we got one more.
There it is, Kenta for the Strong Openweight Championship against Eddie Kingston, which should be a pretty interesting match right here. I'm very curious to see that, and of course, it's a little tester for Eddie, who's going to be in the G1. Of course, Kenta is as well. So, there you go.
You could go in a lot of different directions with this match. I think the narrative of Eddie being the guy to oust the last leader of Bullet Club back in February is going to make him a natural opponent for a lot of Bullet Club going forward, and he's probably not going to be as successful as he was that night, and it could just be the story of Eddie Kingston going forward. Maybe some tags with ELP and stuff like that in the next few months. But yeah, this one could go either way. Eddie Kingston is going to have a pretty solidly dedicated next 2 months in New Japan. We're not going to see him in Ring of Honor. We're not going to see him in AEW other than 1 or 2 things building him up for this. But this is his destination for now. So this is going to be a huge determining factor of exactly what direction they want to take him in New Japan.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see which way they go with this one. Absolutely. So
I'm really looking forward to tuning in every day after G1 for Eddie Kingston's backstage comments.
Absolutely.
Those are going to be amazing. The story that he tells is going to be fantastic.
Yeah. He's one of the best in wrestling at that. He has been for a very long time, and you're right. The
it's
backstage
the right setting for a guy like him, yeah.
In a really free form thing too, because they can go as long as they want. There's really no restrict. There's nobody counting down from 10.
Yeah, they basically have the length of the following match.
Mostly they got to get out of there, or else they start stacking up.
Kevin, before we go, Kingston is in a bracket with Shingo Takagi and David Finlay. 2 people could advance out of that bracket. Do you see Eddie Kingston advancing out of that bracket?
No, I don't.
I don't either.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to be in it on the last day.
I could see him placing 4th, 3rd or 4th at the highest.
Yeah, I predict he will be mathematically in it until the very last day, but not advance out of it. That's
him and Finlay or him and Shingo will be competing. Like, one of those guys will be determined before the match, but he will be clawing to the very last bit, I think. And I think that makes sense for the Kingston story, at least for now.
So we are going to go over a little bit, not a ton here, but I did want to mention a couple things from Hachioji there, which was a show in Hiromu's home section of Tokyo, which is way out in West Tokyo out there. It's quite a trip from the usual haunts of Tokyo Dome area and all that, but that's where Hiromu grew up, and he did a show out there. And just wanted to mention very quickly, he won the main event, of course. He's also going to be appearing for Dragon's Gate soon with Shingo Takagi in his corner, and in the end, there he did get the victory. He wanted to do the final fist bump. He wanted to be the last guy in the fist bump just once. That's all he asked. And of course, Hiromu tends to get a little bit of the hazing from the LIJ guys, but they agreed, okay, just this one time. They brought him a T-shirt. You see the T-shirt there for the folks watching on YouTube with Hiromu on it. And they were going to do the whole thing. They all get up there with the fists. Hiromu was so excited, he bounced off the ropes so that he could get real momentum to come up and do the fist bump. As he approached, they all just dissipated and left him standing there. So for minutes at a time, I think 5 minutes, Hiromu stood there stone still with his fist in the air all by himself in the middle of the ring until fans actually started filing out, leaving, and looking over their shoulder. Is he ever going to go? But he actually guilted Shingo Takagi in backstage comments into being his second for the Dragon's Gate match because he did that to him.
Because he left him hanging.
And then in Blue Justice and Chiba. Blue Justice and Chiba at the Citizens Gymnasium, of course, there was a New Japan versus All Japan main event with Yuji Nagata, who is the All Japan Triple Crown champion on the New Japan side. And that was a win for Nagata right there. But so let's look over here. It was Nagata, Master Wato, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Satoshi Kojima, defeating Kento Miyahara, Yuma Aoyagi, Atsuki Aoyagi, and Yuma Anzai, the super rookie there from All Japan. He ended up, Nagata, the Triple Crown champion, tapped out Yuma Aoyagi, and afterwards Atsuki challenged him for the Triple Crown. I want to make sure I get the right Aoyagi. Yeah, Yuma ended up challenging him for the Triple Crown. It was Suki actually that tapped. That was the junior heavyweight. So that's what's going on there. So you were seeing all this cooperation. You got LIJ going over and doing Fantasticomania with CMLL. You've got the Forbidden Door thing. Hiromu and Shingo are going to go back to Dragon's Gate. You're seeing independent wrestlers coming into New Japan. We're in a golden age of cooperation in wrestling right now, and it's such a fun thing to see. Heck, there's a New Japan guy who's the Triple Crown champion, and it's going over into other eras. Kento Miyahara is going to be on a Noah show, and like I said, Kento's one of the best in the world. So it's really a fun time here, and we do need to talk about Kevin Kelly as well. But just before we do that, any thoughts, Kevin, on just what we're seeing as far as this consistent cooperation going? This is something that, you didn't see it all in Japan during the Baba Inoki years, because that was, that was Hatfield's McCoys, and they would never work together. But the last few years and in the 21st century, we've seen more of it, but more than ever right now. And it's really bringing us a lot of fun combinations and matchups, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, what a time to be alive. It's amazing to see. I have no idea the financial considerations and how all that works to make it, equitable and make everyone feel like they're, getting what they're hoping out of it, whether that's exposure or partnership or just brand extension, or if it's just good relationships or financial. But creatively, I love the what feels like a lack of pressure on it, that it's just like, let's get together and put on good shows. And things like the Okada and Kiyomiya, is that am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
Thing that's sort of like, here's sort of a background feud, and it's like, hey, by the way, these two guys hate each other. Whenever they're going to be together, you can count on there being sparks. But guess what? Neither one, that's not their main thing. Like, Okada's got his own thing going on, and when he's there, but anytime this show's going to happen, there's going to be something happening here. So, like, putting Kiyomiya in the G1, even though he's in a different block than Okada, right? He's got to win a block to get to him.
Right.
Just having that drama there is like, that's a reason to put him in, but it's also a great reason to, like, spread him around and have these other great matches that you could have. So what I love is that here on the stateside, and especially me being an AEW follower so closely, it's like you put such high pressure on these crossovers that it feels like everything's got to be, what do you do now? Because you may not be able to do it again. And it feels like there's more of a looseness now in the Japan side, that it's just sort of like, this makes sense right now. This makes sense right now. Even having, like, Yuji Nagata be the Triple Crown champion is fantastic, because it gives, that guy can still go. Mm-hmm. But, if he were in New Japan, he'd still be doing, young lion matches and six-mans and things like that.
It's an interesting time, because in the past, certainly the Japanese companies post Baba and Inoki have worked together before. It's usually when business is really bad. Yeah. That's usually when it happens for somebody, and they need the help. And right now, maybe perhaps coming out of the pandemic, the companies have decided, hey, right now we're starting to build a little momentum. Maybe we help each other out under the theory of, a rising tide lifts all ships. And it's a bit of a different philosophy. In the past, companies have worked with other companies when they didn't really have much of a choice. And now we're seeing, I think there is a choice, but I think they've chosen to do this because they want to capture the momentum that is being built. Mm-hmm. And that I think is healthy for the entire business. So, speaking of sharing, however, there's an announcer that is being shared.
I don't know how long this sharing is going to happen for.
I know. Kevin Kelly, of course, the new voice of Collision with Nigel McGuinness. Man, that's a good commentary team. And I know that there were some hiccups on night one, but there are always going to be some hiccups on night one. But I think Kevin and Nigel...
Yeah.
I think Kevin and Nigel are going to develop into a really good team as the commentators for Collision. And give Tony credit. I think he went out and got the two best guys that were out there for this, that weren't already working for somebody else. And the two best guys available, I think he hired. I think that was it. It's Kevin and Nigel, because I think Nigel's a terrific commentator, and I've been saying for years that Kevin's the best in the business. Yeah. And, hopefully, we mentioned that, Jim Ross struggled a little bit. Hopefully he's okay. He said he was going to step away for a little while to heal, and hopefully he does. But here's what we know about Kevin. He's going to have a presence as Forbidden Door, probably as the extra analyst for the New Japan guys, so that he can add a little bit of color to Excalibur screaming. And then Kevin will be leading. He'll be leaving Collision for a few weeks to do G1 in person. He is still going to be working the G1 tournament in Japan, and he will be leaving Collision for a little while to do that, which is an interesting point. So he worked that out with Tony beforehand. We know that. And he's going to be doing some other big events, but mostly he'll be doing his New Japan work remotely, including, according to Dave Meltzer, the tag team tournament at the end of the year. He'll still be doing those, but it'll be from home instead of traveling on the road in Japan, which would allow him to perhaps do Collision concurrently. There's no info on anything else after the new year. For me, guys, it's hard to imagine that Tony is just going to want him away that much. So I feel like whenever his current situation with New Japan is up and whatever he's agreed to, I have a feeling we're going to need a new English voice of New Japan. I can cross my fingers and hope, but I feel like he's going to be an AEW announcer pretty soon, right?
Yeah, okay. So I told Ely and James McDaniel this last night that it was very disconcerting for me to be listening to Kevin Kelly in the daylight live on a wrestling show. I don't remember the last time because it's usually dark out or I'm watching on tape delay for this to happen. I'm watching live with other people and we're all talking about Kevin Kelly together. What a time to be alive again. We were talking with somebody in the know on the Discord about the plan for Kevin Kelly. And essentially the takeaway was there is a concrete plan in place for the next 6 months. They are looking at making sure that he's around for the next 18 months in New Japan. But as we all know in the wrestling business, plans can change. And so the best laid plans, appreciate Kevin Kelly while you got him in New Japan because he may just be a Wrestle Kingdom guy and Dominion and G1 going forward into the new year. And that's going to be okay. There are other people that can take the reins. There were people before him. But that is not to say that Kevin Kelly is not one of the best announcers in the world, and his presence will be missed if he is gone from New Japan.
Yeah,
you're right, Jeremy. There were people before Kevin. There weren't good people before Kevin. So this is what worries me. Now, Ian Riccaboni is good, but Ian Riccaboni is also busy with things, so it's tricky.
Including a young family.
I mean, if you listen to some of those English language broadcasts of Wrestle Kingdom before Kevin Kelly, holy shit!
Yeah.
Let's not go back to some of those guys. Certainly, who
bring back Morrow and Barnett.
Well, Barnett screwed himself over by trying to ruin an entire card there. But Morrow, of course, I would absolutely love it. I would love it, but it's
not very
viable. He also has his Showtime schedule, which is what really pays his bills. They're the Showtime boxing, and he does the Bellator stuff for them as well a lot. So. Who's available? It's going to be a tough one there. So we might have to We might have to break in some new guys. Let's hope and we go that direction.
Gambino full time with Chris Charlton.
So let's see here. If we got some comments here real quick. As long as Kevin Kelly doesn't leave New Japan permanently, I'll be happy. According to Colin, I would love that too. Your lips to God's ears. But if he were to leave New Japan and replace him with Ian, that would be the hope if Ian is available, because he would be, again, going back to that, he would be the best guy available. There are some ex-WWE announcers floating around out there because they go through those like water sometimes on the NXT side and things, but I don't know if any of them are up to speed on that product. I honestly don't know the answer to that. Maybe
as long as it's not
you've got to. That's the key to the New Japan thing is Kevin Kelly is a genuine fan of that product.
Yes. Right.
And when he's calling it, you believe that he believes that it is the best wrestling in the world. And I don't know what WWE guys are going to have the kind of passion and interest that requires the commitment of time and energy it takes to have part of your job calling a promotion that is across the world.
Yeah, and Brad says whatever you do not use Kozlov, and Colin agrees with him. I agree with you guys too. I hope it's not somebody that thinks they're in Bullet Club. That horse shit is just so old.
Gosh. Yeah.
Kozlov stumbling around like he's in Bullet Club, and yeah. Thank goodness for Veda Scott, by the way. She's actually added something good to that strong team. But the yeah, I mean it's going to be tough, but I mean I guess it's going to have to be somebody because I just think especially if. And I guess there's no guarantee the Collision's going to take off forever because the thing about Collision too, we mentioned that on the Boom, haven't we, Kevin? We talked a little bit about this, that it's a show that's going to be facing some very heavy competition all through football season and against college football games. Then in January, the NFL slides over to Saturdays and for the playoffs. Then for 2 months of the year, TNT broadcasts NHL and NBA playoffs, which is going to throw that schedule into complete chaos. We're talking more than half the year. It's either going to be up against American football or have its schedule thrown off. So,
that's not even counting UFC.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. It's just so much.
Which I guess if you're watching UFC, you could just skip the prelims and watch Collision and then tune in for a main show. But yeah, I mean, I think they're. Who knows? I mean, without getting too into like just AEW future talk, like it seems like they've got a lot to prove this year, and if they do, they're going to be sitting pretty, and if they don't, it's going to be tough. So I think there's a lot of. I just think there's a lot of energy invested in making sure Collision succeeds.
Yeah, and it's true, and it's fine to talk about. In my opinion, it's fine to talk about AEW here on this show because AEW has an impact on New Japan. They not just in the way they work together, but people going back and forth. We've seen with Jay White and Juice and things. What happens in one does affect what happens in the other. So the fate of Collision will have, and more than just Kevin Kelly, will have an impact on what happens with New Japan. So it's going to be a very fascinating. It's a fascinating time in wrestling, and it's not going to get any less interesting because there's going to be all these things happening with the shows. And of course, we mentioned, will we ever see CM Punk in New Japan? That's something that a lot of people have been hoping for. Maybe more possible than before. Who knows? I mean, but he's going to be the main guy on Collision, and so the fate of that show will be tied to all of that as well.
You got to think that Punk's going to want his match with Tanahashi too at some point.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised we didn't angle that this year.
Because again, if you're talking about strike while the iron's hot or while it's still possible, you might not want to wait too long for CM Punk dream matches. Might want to squeeze those in as soon as you possibly can. Just saying. I'm not saying there are going to be more problems with CM Punk. I'm only saying there have been problems everywhere he's ever wrestled.
Everywhere he's ever wrestled. Yeah, and that's just in his body.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. When I was watching that show on Collision, my whole thing was don't get hurt. Don't get hurt.
Yeah, don't get hurt. I think
he
was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, boy.
Don't jump over the rope. No springboard. Don't
get chopped from Joe. That was all there was.
Yeah.
So again, since New Japan is so intertwined with AEW, I want to emphasize again the Boom. It's James and Kevin's show here on the Fight Game Media Network. It's a terrific show, very entertaining, covers everything you want to know about AEW wrestling, and it's a really strong, entertaining program, Kevin. And we've been lucky enough to be part of your show the last couple of weeks. We're thrilled that you're here on ours. We really appreciate your time and expertise. Thank you very much.
Dude, it's been a blast. The last few days have been a blast. Like you said, it's a jackpot time to start going on these other shows to talk about this stuff because there's never run out of things to talk about.
No, not at all. And of course, Mel Gray is going to be here on the show next week to tell us what it was like to be at Forbidden Door 2 in person in Toronto and give us that flavor of being in what I'm sure is going to be a very enthusiastic crowd.
I'm excited in that for her.
I know,
wow.
Yeah.
I'm
really
jealous.
Yeah, I know. She gets to do a lot of cool stuff up there. She's in the Detroit area, and of course, with it lends itself to some interesting live programming because she can make it to Chicago, she can get to Toronto. It's a good little centralized spot. I used to live up in northern West Indiana, well, that's where I kind of grew up, and you could get to Detroit, Indianapolis, and Chicago, and I was able to hit some WrestleManias that way, and now she's able to do some of these Forbidden Doors and stuff that way. So pretty cool for her, and good for us because we get to have her on and talk about it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Should we wrap this up, Mr. Conway?
Yeah, I guess so. We appreciate everybody joining us for this supersized edition of Speaking of Strong Style. Again, for Kevin Ely, Jeremy Finestone, I'm Stephen Conway. Thank you so much for joining us both here and on the podcast, and we'll see you again very soon.